I want to start my talk off today by actually talking about something that my buddy Steve Monroe from Hubud actually talked about at our conference Running Remote about 3 years ago, which was this word that I never heard about, which is basically called karoshi. And it's a Japanese word. And for anyone that's in the chat right now, please kind of perk up if you know what that word means. But I spent the better part of 2 weeks literally going through this, the history of this word. It's a very interesting phenomenon. I'll give you a little bit of a hint. It's a Japanese word. Do either of you guys know what it is who are on the chat right now? Without cheating and going to Google. No idea?
No
okay,
idea.
Cool. So let me give you a couple examples. No ideas. Let me give you a couple examples here of karoshi. So this is an example of karoshi. This is another example of karoshi. And here are 2 more examples of karoshi. Anybody else have any other ideas as to what that word?
Drunk people? Drunk people?
Sorry that I'm bringing it down a little bit for everybody, but basically karoshi is a Japanese word which literally means death caused by overwork or job-related exhaustion. It's literally like ka, excess, ro, labor, shi, death. So it's excess labor death. And this is not just a small phenomenon. Throughout the 2000s, someone was dying of karoshi almost once every 2 days in Japan. It's actually a really scary phenomenon in Japan. The reason why the data point has actually gone down, by the way, is because they changed the definition of karoshi. So that's why numbers have gone down. The Japanese have a very interesting way of hiding the way that this phenomenon exists inside of Japan. Here are basically the medical causes of karoshi. And this is by this professor Benzogi Asgadi in the Asia Pacific Business and Economics perspective. He basically said, medically speaking, death by karoshi can be attributed to several symptoms, most notably acute heart failure and hemorrhagic stroke. Karoshi is said to be a silent killer with little to no symptoms being present before death. Now, I'm not an academic. I dropped out of my PhD many years ago. However, I see a pretty interesting correlation, which is anyone that works more than 159 hours of overtime in a month usually ends up dying of karoshi. So if Mr. Asgari ever sees this, I've assembled what I like to call Liam's amazing Venn diagram of excess labor death. Basically, these are people that work 16 hours a day, and this is people that die of karoshi. There's like a pretty interesting correlation that goes on there. And actually, I've been looking into this a lot deeper because I did this presentation a couple months ago, and I'm going to be getting some interesting data from the Japanese government. It's a serious problem down there. So it's a pretty clear correlation to me. If you look at GDP per hour worked for Japan versus the United States, it's actually almost exactly the same, but the Japanese work twice as much as Americans. So literally, Americans are twice as productive as the average Japanese worker or work week. So this is a big problem. And this kind of comes down to a base assumption, which is work equals productivity, and it does not. And I am the founder of a tech company that specifically measures this type of data. So we're going to kind of get into that. But before I get into all of those details, my name is Liam. I run these 2 tech companies, TimeDoctor and Staff.com. Also running remote, specifically for the context of this presentation, which is a conference on building and scaling remote teams. We've been running that for about 2.5 years. And so we have employees in, as I said before, 38 countries all over planet Earth. And this was not I've been doing remote work for about 15 years. So back in the day, it used to be called telework, or we used outsourcing as well. But really, the new terminology now is remote. And it took a long time to be able to get there. So I'm going to give you a very quick background of where I came from there to now. So I'm Canadian. As I said before, I'm in Canada right now. And in Canada, you two things. You either play hockey, look like this, and that was much more interesting than getting punched in the face. And that actually ended up taking me to a competitive level. I ended up just not making the world podium or being sent to Worlds and Olympics for 2000 and I think it was like 2006 or something like that, Olympics. So that ended up taking me here, which is McGill University. Basically, that was kind of like the second stage of my life. Went to McGill, was going to become a professor, and I ended up getting my very first class. And after 7 years of grad school, I ended up getting my very first class. And I gave that class, it was about 300 students. I ended up with a little bit more than 150 and some of the worst academic reviews in the history of McGill's department. McGill's been up and running for about 250 years, and I got the worst lecture review in the history of the department. This is just one of those comments. Worst prof at McGill. I think he enjoys watching everyone fail. Not super helpful or nice to students, just horrible. So I remember walking into my supervisor's office, Morton Weinfeld, and I said, I don't think I'm very good at this. And he said, no, you're not. And then I said, okay, so what do you think that I should really be doing with my life? And he said, you got to get pretty good at this lecturing thing because you're going to be doing it for the next 10 to 20 years before you get to do anything fun. And so with that said, I literally threw a master's thesis under his door and I was out into the real world. And what I learned from that is I really liked teaching, but I did not like lecturing. So that actually ended up in my very first remote first business, which was an online tutoring company. Drew that to about 200 tutors throughout North America and Europe, sold that later. But I had encountered a karoshi level problem. So this was the issue. I remember going into my dentist's office and I was complaining about a chipped tooth. So literally like opened up my mouth and, you know, the dentist has that really bright light that shoots shoots the light down at your teeth. And the dentist gasped. And it's never a good idea when a health professional gasps when they're looking at you. I was just at the doctor's office literally 2 hours ago. And so he told me, he said, Liam, which tooth are you talking about? You've chipped all of your teeth. And he actually thought I had pancreatic cancer, which is the only thing that you can get from chipping all of your teeth within a year. And so after actually figuring out, number one, it wasn't fourth stage pancreatic cancer, I wasn't going to die. Next stop was to my therapist. And my therapist said, you are in a state of anxiety and stress that like, you know, you're at PTSD level stress. I was working 16 hours a day. And it was really something that my therapist told me, you either need to basically relieve your stress or shut down the business. And so for a lot of you people right now that are probably listening to this and watching this, whether you're looking for a remote first job or you're looking to build remote first, this was the way that I got out of that stress and why I also teach about remote work so much. It was so important to kind of fundamentally changing my life. So with that said, 5 rules to hire remote, and also not have yourself or the people that you work with die of karoshi in the process. Super important. Make sure that no one is dying of karoshi. If they do, you have really screwed up as an employer. Is everyone with me so far? Any questions that you have?
No questions.
I don't think so, but if you do, no questions so far? Cool. If you have any questions, just put them down and harass me whenever, and we will we'll pause and address them. So rule number 1 is you actually need to hire people who want to work remotely. So where do you find these people? Well, other than 6 Nomads, which is a fantastic option, relatively new option, but we haven't personally tried it yet. So I need to try it first before I actually can put it up on this particular slide. But there's a huge kind of variation of options that you can take. So the big one that's out there is obviously Upwork. And that was an merging of Odesk and Elance a couple of years ago. I actually remember working with both Odesk and Elance, and they hated each other. I remember when I'd go to a conference and the Elance guys would be on one side of like the conference, you know, environment, and then the other company would be on the opposite. The Australian co-working or co-sided marketplace, outsourcing marketplace, going public and getting about $300 million. And the name escapes me right now, but that was a merger of that organization. They're basically the biggest ones on the market right now. However, they do charge a pretty significant percentage of ongoing work. So their rates float from anywhere from 5 to sometimes up to 30% of an employee's salary. And they are basically the person that controls the money in between. TopTal is another option for people that are interested in more the headhunting component of remote work. So if you want to find someone that's really good, TopTal, and by extension, a company like Six Nomads, is going to be able to do all of the work for you to be able to make sure that these candidates are really, really good. But then in exchange for that, obviously, they take a fee. So Upwork is kind of like the crazy forest. You don't know what you're going to get. You're going to have to filter it yourself. And then companies like TopTal are organizations that are actually going to pre-filter those candidates for you, but it's going to cost you more money. Another honorable mention is FlexJobs. Sarah Sutton, who runs FlexJobs, has actually been to Running Remote the very first year. She's coming back this next year, which I'm very excited about. And they run a different model, which is you literally pay to go on to their job board. So you pay, I believe it's, $50 or $100 a month or something like that, and you can get access to the candidates that are on there. Another great one is Dribbble. So a lot of people think that Dribbble is just a design website. It's actually not. It's also a really great hiring platform for designers. We find a ton of talent on there, and it's a fantastic spot to be able to find people. 99 Designs is another one that's great. If you are going and if you just want piecework done, so if you want a website built, 99 Designs is really a fantastic encapsulated solution for people that are looking for that kind of prefab work. I kind of think of it as like, do you want to build a custom house or do you want to build a prefab? 99 Designs is a fantastic place for a prefab. Dribble's probably a great place to be able to build your house. However, the two platforms that we have personally found the most success with is We Work Remotely and Remote OK. The reason why is they are full-time remote job boards. They're remote first job boards. So the candidates that are floating around there are actually already in the same mindset that you are currently looking for, which is hiring someone in a remote first capacity. So again, connected back to what we do, this is just a photo of us and some of the dev team doing like sand dune buggy races in Dubai. Here's the support team in Boracay. Here's, I think, the marketing team in Bohol. So we do these team retreats every single year. We actually have one single team retreat where everyone flies into one location per year. That's up to you. It's very expensive. We see it as a positive ROI. If you want to ask questions and more details on that, please let me know in the comments and I can go through that. Also, we make sure that our employees write us testimonials about who we actually, like what's it like working inside of the company? What's the cultural components to working at a remote first organization? So we have a couple of those there. And for anyone that's just interested in stealing our job application process, just go to time-doctor.breezy.hr. Take a look at the way that we structure our applications. And I could go into that for hours, but fundamentally it's easier for you to just steal that. Don't worry about it and just use it and just fill in your own stuff. Rule number 2 is you need to build processes into your organization. So, and I know that I think you guys have had, you've had remote.com, you guys know about GitLab, obviously. I could go through how you do process documentation and we could go into that for hours. It's really so critical. It's probably the #1 reason why remote first companies fail is because they don't have proper process documentation inside of their organizations. However, a really great way to cheat that and to just kind of get the cheat code and get to the actual thing that you want to do is process documentation is super boring. It's like doing your taxes times 100. No one wants to write a document about like how to sign an email. By the way, we have a document, which is how to sign an email because one of our employees who is religious had a Bible verse in her signature and ended up giving us like an 8-page letter about how he's never going to work with us ever again and how dare he see a Bible verse inside of his organizations or inside of Time Doctor. So these types of things pop up. You need processes and documentation to be able to make sure that everything works properly. Now, if you just go to about.gitlab.com/handbook, GitLab has the largest process document for remote first teams on planet Earth. Dimitri, who is the CTO and co-founder and also attended running remote the very first year, he put all of this stuff down. So if you want to know what their company values are about, that's the URL right there. And I can give you this presentation afterwards if you want to get all these URLs. If you want to know what kind of stock options you get when you join GitLab, you can go to that URL. If you want to know how they do a product demo, that's there too. So everything is there for you. And the beauty of it is Dimitri says steal it. So again, this is rule number 2 is steal again. Just go in there, fork GitLab's database, and then just edit that for your own purposes. It's very quick and easy, and they've actually built it in a way that you can very quickly and easily steal it. Rule number 3 is you need to get the right tools in place. So it's people, process, and tools in that order. If you have really good tools and crappy process and stupid people, that will burn your business down even faster than if you didn't have tools in place in the first place. So it's in that order. You need to make sure that you've got those right people because that's the core of your business. And without proper people and proper processes, nothing else works. So I'm going to go down real quick what my kind of tool stack is. And this probably changes depending upon who you talk to, but this is just our version. So Bose SoundTrue Ultras, they are the things that I currently have right now. And hopefully you can see that on camera. The thing that I like about these is they have amazing microphones. So they're actually not that expensive. They're about $70. We issue these to everyone inside of the company because we need to make sure that everyone has really good mics. And you can literally put them in your pocket and you can move around with them. I literally have a dozen of them floating around. 1Password. So we use 1Password inside of our organization. The reason being is everyone inside of the company has ciphers now that connect to 1Password. So if you work inside of the company, you do not get the password for anything inside of the company. You get 1Password. 1Password then fills in that section for the password access, and you don't know what that password is. Now, why would you think that that's important? Well, if you need to let go of that person in the future, SOC 2 compliance would mean that you would have to change all of those passwords. However, with 1Password, you can literally remove them from 1Password and then they don't have access to anything inside of the organization. That's really important when you're talking about security, particularly for a company like Time Doctor, where we have millions of users' data. We take that very seriously, so we need to remain secure inside of our organization. We also have speed tests. So anywhere that we go, and I know we can talk about digital nomadism as well in this presentation, we don't let anyone be in an area that doesn't have 5 up, 5 down. So what we have them do, I was in Cairo about 3.5 months ago. I went to about 8 co-working spaces and I couldn't get 5 down, 5 up. And what I need to do is actually submit a speed test. So if you go to speedtest.net/result, whatever those numbers are, you'll actually see the speed test that I run. So we need to authenticate that way. And it actually is it's put me on forced vacation a few times because I like to go to really weird places, but definitely important if you're going to be working remotely. ViewSonic VX3211 whatever. It's a 32-inch monitor. It has a USB-C connector, and it's awesome. They're down to like $300. Buy one, put a big monitor, connect your computer to it. Trust me, you're gonna have a huge boost in productivity. Google Suites for Business. I mean, I think pretty much everybody uses that. If you don't know what that is, then let me know in the chat and we can talk about it in a deeper way. Basically, it provides you cloud calendar, cloud documentation, cloud Excel, cloud Drive, everything, and you can just kind of share and collaborate on all of those cloud doc. Because if someone gets hit by a bus at any point, connected back to our process documentation, it's super important that they all come together, and we can pick up where that person left off if something horrific happens. Slack, everyone knows Slack, I hope, that's listening to this presentation right now. Honorable mention is Twist by Doist. They actually are doing an asynchronous version of Slack, so check that out if you're interested. Jing is an app that they're discontinuing, and I'm really frustrated about it, but it's an amazing product. It's just a little kind of dot that sits up in the top right-hand corner of my screen, and at any point I can click on that and do a 5-minute screen share and then turn that into a bit.ly link. So I can send that video off to whoever I want, and super useful if you are going to be using, if you need to kind of like make a design critique or something like that for somebody. Stormboard is what we use for online collaboration for whiteboarding. We use Skype as a free option for video calls. We use Zoom as a paid option for video calls. We do a lot of our long form communication on Basecamp that needs to be documented. We do a lot of our small projects on Trello that need to be documented. And then obviously, I like to use time tracking with Time Doctor, but I'm a little bit biased. Rule number 4 is you need to really start communicating. So if you have not built in a culture of communication inside of your remote company, you will start to see degradation occur very, very quickly. So basically I have a rule for this, which is in-person beats video, video beats audio, audio beats instant messaging, and instant messaging beats email. As you move up the chain, you become more focused. As you move down the chain, you become less focused. So you always need to be moving up the chain. If I have, as an example, 10 messages through Slack, and we're talking about a particular issue and we haven't solved it, I try to move that to a video call as quickly as humanly possible so that I just get that issue solved. For a little bit of a deeper dive on that, just Google synchronous versus asynchronous communication. It's a major debate that's going on inside of remote work, and we don't know who's right. It's actually quite interesting. There's kind of a 50-50 split, and that's basically this, which is communicating with people face-to-face. Is that more efficient than the bother that it creates for people inside of remote first organizations? Rule number 5, communicate who you are. So I actually have this document, which is Blueprint to Liam and his weird little quirks. My designer said he couldn't put the weird part in, it just wouldn't have fit properly, but this is me. So I have created this document, and what I did is I spoke to 3 of my closest friends, and I asked them, what would you tell someone who's going to work for me how to get the most out of me? So think of this as like, this is like an operational process document for me as an individual. And a lot of the stuff that came out of that conversation resulted in, number 1, me getting kind of pissed off at some of my friends, to be honest with you, because I'm not a very nice person based off of their projections, but a lot of truth came out as well. So I have that. I actually have a video from me about 3 years ago discussing this, and we won't go through that. It's way too weird, but I have a thesis statement at the end of this document, which is, I value decision-making above all else. I'd rather you make the wrong decision than none at all. And that's so important for me when I talk about remote first organizations, because a lot of the times you're a 12-hour time difference away. Igor, who is the general manager and co-founder of Running Remote, as an example, he lives in Bali. And so we maybe have 1 to 2 hours of sync time per day. So it's really important for him to make his own independent decisions. Any decision can be reversed within 24 hours. Guarantee it. You know, I haven't found one yet that can't be reversed. So make decisions, take action. You're not going to get fired. At least in our organization, if you take no action, that's an almost guaranteed firing as opposed to taking action, even if it's the wrong decision. So with that said, remote work is really the future. We're about 25% higher retention-wise than on-premise teams. 65% of people want to work remotely, and it's actually the #1 perk for millennials. Also, honorable mention, 3 out of 5 Generation Z people. So we're seeing a massive wave right now. Right now, just to kind of give you context, 7.9% of the US workforce works remotely. So we're starting to see a very interesting shift, but it's all built into the younger generation. So once this actually hits, the projection is we will have 50% remote work in the United States by 2027, which is a pretty scary statistics that I don't even believe, but that's what a lot of these smart people are talking about. We're about 35% faster to hire than on-premise employees, and remote work is way up. It's 43% up year over year. And I think that number is actually accelerating now. We're almost at an exponential escape curve. So I really want to kind of get into the last part of this story, which is talking about people that I see as the unsung heroes of remote work. So this is my friend, Marilyn. Marilyn is actually a Running Remote alumnus, and she lives in Bangladesh, which is right here. Now, I'm sure that probably not many of you have been to Bangladesh, because Bangladesh is actually here. It's the next country over. I always like to do that to kind of see how many people react to that one. But she has another friend, Fahim, and Fahim is somebody that has really become, at least for me, the result of the remote work movement, which is empowering people to work regardless of wherever you're from, or wherever you, whatever your disabilities are or your drawbacks are, you can always be working remotely and succeed. Let me see, and if you guys can't hear this, please let me know.
No sound.
There's no sound?
Should there be any sound?
No sound? Okay. I will include it actually in the notes. Basically, the story of Fahim is something that's been very exciting to me. Is Fahim has muscular dystrophy, and he went from begging in the streets of Dhaka in Bangladesh to working remotely, and he's now a 1% earner inside of Bangladesh as a designer. So anyone can do this. I think of Fahim and I think to myself, oh, my back hurts a little bit this morning. And then I think about Fahim and I just think to myself, okay, well, get the hell up and start doing what you're supposed to be doing. So in conclusion, remote work really gives employers and employees the opportunity to find the best of each other. And I think that's something that Six Nomads is doing in such a huge way. And I think the greater movement of remote work is doing that in such an exciting way. So I'm really excited to kind of see where it goes. If you guys have questions, I'm totally ready to answer them. I know that that was a lot of information in a relatively short amount of time. But the things that I really like to do is go into Q&A and really sort of work out some deeper things connected to remote work, because that's what I'm super excited about. So if anyone has any questions, please let me know. I'm ready to answer them.